Hello, this is the 265th edition of Catch of the Day, available on the Branch Talk YouTube channel. Today, we're going to read from a book written by Trent Wilde entitled The King of Crisis in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Reading from the inside cover, the first part of this publication outlines the current crisis within the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. Our church's leadership is deeply divided, and some fear there may be a denominational split. It is imperative that we understand the crisis and seek God for a solution. The second part of this article is focused on just such a solution. With his eye upon the church, the Lord has again and again allowed matters to come to a crisis, that in their extremity his people should look alone for his help. Ellen White, General Conference Daily Bulletin, April 13, 1891, paragraph 20. March 2019, by Trent Wilde, 10 Strings Publishing. Page 1. The King of Crisis in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is in a crisis. 2015 saw what has been called the most divisive General Conference session since 1888. The issue was women's ordination. More specifically, the delegates of the 2015 General Conference session in San Antonio, Texas, were to vote on the following question: is it acceptable for division executive committees, as they may deem it appropriate in their territories, to make provision for the ordination of women to the gospel ministry, yes or no? At the end of the day, 1,381 voted no, 977 voted yes, and 5 abstained. Clearly, the church is deeply divided over this issue, and tension has only increased since the vote. Some have pointed to the vote as setting in stone the official theological stance of the church on women's ordination, while others have reminded us that it only determined whether it would be allowed for individual divisions to make provision for women's ordination. Some unions have taken the stance that ordination falls within the jurisdiction of unions, and that the General Conference does not have the authority to determine whether they should ordain women. These unions have been generally characterized as non-compliant, and the GC has been busy trying to figure out what to do with these and other non-compliant entities ever since. Thus, the issue has largely shifted from debating the merits of women's ordination to debating the authority of the various levels of the church's structure, and what to do when entities act contrary to the church policy. As with anything, it is important to consider each act and each moment in the church's history within its broader context. In 2017, Spectrum magazine published an article written by George Knight, the denomination's leading historian, which reviews much of the relevant history. Footnote 1. George Knight, in Catholic or Adventist, The Ongoing Struggle Over Authority. 9.5 Thesis, Spectrum, October 2nd, 2017. 2. For those who are not aware, the organizational structure of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is as follows. The General Conference is governing body. It operates through 13 divisions, each responsible for the work in different regions. Each division contains unions, and each union contains conferences and or missions, each of which contain local churches. Here are some excerpts. The plain fact is that the earliest Adventists feared structured churches, and with good reason. That fear is nicely expressed in the October 1861 meeting that saw the establishment of the first local conference. They later established the first General Conference in 1863. As might be expected, tensions eventually developed between the authority of the local conferences and that of the General Conference. Interestingly, Ellen White on several occasions questioned whether the rulings of the General Conference were always the voice of God. In 1891, for example, she wrote that I was obliged to take the position that there was not the voice of God in the General Conference management and decisions. Many of the positions taken going forth as the voice of the General Conference have been the voice of 1, 2, or 3 men who were misleading the conference. Again, in 1896, she noted that the General Conference is no longer the voice of God, and in 1901 she wrote that the people have lost confidence in those who have management of the work. Yet we hear that the voice of the General Conference is the voice of God. Every time I have heard this, I have thought that it was almost blasphemy. The voice of the conference ought to be the voice of God, but it is not. An analysis of those negative statements indicates that they refer to occasions when the General Conference did not act as a representative body, when its decision-making authority was centralized in a person or a few people, or when the General Conference had not been following sound principles. The second round of organizational refinement took place between 1901 and 1903, when several major changes were made. The two most important were the replacement of the autonomous auxiliary organizations, such as those that controlled education, publishing, medical, Sabbath school, and so on, with the departmental system, and the development of union conferences to stand as intermediary administrative units between the General Conference and the local conferences. Footnote number 4, E.G. White, Board of Council Meeting, MS 33, no date, 1891. Number 5, E.G. White, to men who occupy responsible positions, July 1, 1896. Number 6, E.G. White, regarding the Southern work, MS 37, April 1901. 7, Barry David Oliver, SDA, the organizational structure, past, present, and future, Berrien Springs, Michigan, Andrews University Press, 1989, 98, and 99. Number 8, for the best treatment on the reorganization, see Oliver, SDA organizational structure. Take care.